Welcome to the Shoal Weekly Podcast, where we talk about all things film, TV, and popular culture. I'm Joe, and joining me as always is Charlie.
Hello.
We've got Connor.
Hello.
And our newcomer Ben, who joined us for the first time last week.
Hi, guys.
If you're joining us for the first time, or if you're joining us from our social media platforms, thanks for following and supporting us. We really appreciate it. If you're just joining us from our link tree, do make sure you go and check out our social media pages if you want to stay in the loop, in the Shoal. If you're following along on our socials this week, you will know that today we are going to be talking about Avatar from 2009. And I've been looking forward to this all week. But before we have a controversial conversation about Avatar, let's have a catch up, guys. It's been a long week since we last did the podcast. Connor, what have you been watching this week?
I watched Let the Right One In, the Swedish, I don't want to call it horror film really, because it's not that kind of thing, but it's an adaptation, like a sort of modern vampire story, which is really good. I watched A Simple Plan, which is Sam Raimi thriller, which was just like a solid thriller. And I watched Beautiful Boy and Soul on the same day, and that just destroyed me emotionally. But they are both incredible films, so I would say absolutely watch those. I think Beautiful Boy is on iPlayer still, because I always forget to check iPlayer, and all four, they have really good films on that rotate a lot, so...
I believe it was an Amazon Prime original, so I think it's on there if iPlayer runs out.
Yeah, it'll probably be on there, won't it, forever if it's an Amazon one, yeah. But that was my view, and it was a solid week of stuff, I'd say.
I haven't seen Soul yet. Soul's been making its rounds.
Yeah, I was a little bit worried it would fall too close to Inside Out, but it really doesn't. It doesn't sort of. It's not similar in any way, really. It's a really, really good film.
Ben, what have you been watching this week?
Bit of a boring week for me, I'm afraid. I just continued binging Discovery of Witches, season 2. So that's really good. Like last week, I recommend it. And yeah, it's just really good stuff.
You've been really trying to plug it.
I am. I thought I'd just bring it back for a second week just to make sure that if somebody forgot about it, this is a reminder to go watch it.
Every day this week, you've been messaging me saying, "Joe, have you started Discovery of Witches yet?" And I've just ignored it.
Ben's recurring segment on the podcast where he talks about Discovery of Witches.
I'll make sure that I don't watch the final episode before next week so I can plug it again.
And Charlie, what obscure thing have you watched this week that no one's heard of?
Yeah, pretty much. It's called Meshes of the Afternoon, and it's this weird, like, avant-garde, pre-war, weird-ass dream thing where she, like, meets her, like, demons and stuff within her, like, dreams, and it keeps recurring, and it's very weird, but definitely worth a watch. Meant to have, like, a deep meaning, but I can't really see it. It's just pretty cool.
Where can we watch it?
It's on Mubi, actually.
Alright, cool. Yeah.
Mubi, an underrated streaming service.
Yeah, get on it. Especially if you're a university student, you get it for free. What about you, Joe? What have you been watching?
No films. Well, kind of a film, but I actually got myself a week's trial to Broadway HD. It's only available in America, so I was using a VPN to get it.
No,
But I know I really wanted to watch a particular musical with my girlfriend, but we actually ended up watching Miss Saigon, the one that was recorded in 2014 on the West End, and I've only ever heard a few songs at drama school, but we watched the full thing, and it was fantastic. I didn't know it was based on Madame Butterfly. It's the famous Italian opera. It was really good. It was very difficult in places. I can see why it was very controversial when it was on Broadway in the 80s, because it was a lot of white actors playing people of color. But thankfully, this version from 2014 had some amazing Asian actors and actresses. I think the lead girl was 17 when she did it, and she was just phenomenal. So if you're a fan of musicals, or even if you're just a fan of films set in the Vietnam War, it's fantastic. If you don't know what it's about, it's essentially there was a lot of men who made a lot of money from women. Basically, they were pimps, and they made a lot of money out of the American GIs while they were stationed before the fall of Saigon. And every night they would host a contest to find the best prostitute, and that was the Miss Saigon contest. So it's quite heavy at the start, quite misogynistic and quite racist, but it's a wonderful, beautiful story. It's quite romantic, so I recommend it. Unfortunately, you can only find it on that Broadway HD, or you can buy yourself a DVD of it from somewhere, eBay, Amazon. Bit of a slow week for us all, I think. Then we haven't watched too much. I think Connor's watched the most out of all of us.
Does that mean I win? What do I win?
You win the first round in the next section, which is Charlie's. No, no, you get to go first with Charlie's Letterboxd ratings.
Oh man, okay, that sounds like. Is that
You sound
punishment?
so excited, Connor.
No, go on. I genuinely do really like the segment, so let's go.
So I thought I'd switch things up a bit, and I've got a different question for each of you. So go on, we'll start with Connor, seeing as you won that round.
I was only joking about winning that. I don't want people to really think I'm that much of an egotist.
Well,
Go on.
how many different countries have you watched films from? Like you've logged on Letterboxd?
Like all time, or
Yeah.
how many different countries?
Yeah.
I'm just gonna guess at like 19, because as much as I try and like watch, non-English films, I think I still watch a lot of like American and British films. I'm gonna say 19.
It's 37.
37.
Yeah,
So
which is pretty mad. And aside from the US, what country do you reckon you've logged the most films from?
is it just Britain, or is it more?
Japan.
Japan's a good shout. I thought it would have been Japan.
Is it just Britain?
Yeah, it's UK.
You were talking so much about Studio Ghibli films over
Yeah.
the past week, and I thought it would be that.
Japan. I'm just a poser, obviously. Japan must be up there, though, surely. But yeah.
Yeah, I should have got the number, but I
Mhm.
didn't. I'm an awful statistician. Joe, thought this would be interesting. Can you name all the films you've rated 5 stars?
Oh,
I'll give you
okay.
a hint. There's 15.
It's 15. Okay, let's do this. This is really also putting me in the spotlight. People are going to judge my ratings very seriously. Okay, well, let's start with my favorite films that I know I've rated 5 stars. The Dark Knight,
Yeah.
Drive, Arrival,
Yeah.
Prisoners,
Yeah.
Minions.
The Muppets Christmas Carol. No, I'm only joking.
One eternity later.
Two left.
If Revenge of the Sith isn't one of these.
Oh, The Empire Strikes Back. Thanks, Ben.
Yeah.
The Empire Strikes Back.
There's 2 more.
And two more after The
Yeah,
Empire
yeah,
Strikes Back. Okay. Let me think. None of the Marvel films. I know they're like 4 stars, some of them. Man. Oh, 2 left. Come on.
It's Meet the Fockers and Cars 2.
Yeah, Transformers 1 and 2.
Oh, you've got it. You
Bang it
based
out.
it there.
No, I'm afraid I'm going to have to give up at 13.
No, it's your name.
Ah.
And perks of being a wallflower.
Of course.
Yeah,
I did pretty good.
you did. I
very
wouldn't.
good.
I wouldn't know all mine. Like that is mental. And Ben, I thought a good lead-in to our main topic of discussion. Who rated Avatar the highest out of me, Joe, and Connor?
Joe. Just purely because you two have said you didn't like it more so.
Well, so Connor hasn't even rated it. He thinks it's that awful. And me and Joe both rated it 3.5.
It's
Oh,
a trick question.
It is a trick question.
Can't
We
believe
got
that.
you.
Got him.
well, I mean, we've had a pretty quiet week in terms of films that we've watched, but it hasn't been a quiet week for the film industry. We had the Golden Globes get announced, and also we lost Christopher Plummer, an amazing actor. If you didn't know, he made a name for himself in The Sound of Music very, very long time ago. And then more recently, he replaced Kevin Spacey in that film All the Money in the World, which was a good move, I think.
Yeah.
And then he was in a fantastic film from 2 years ago now, Knives Out. If you haven't seen that, go and check that out. It's currently on Amazon Prime. Knives Out is a fantastic film. So yeah, Christopher Plummer, may he rest in peace. An amazing contribution to the film industry.
Yeah.
And then obviously the Golden Globes, as I mentioned. Chaz, why don't you talk us through some of the Golden Globe nominations, because you've been more in the loop with the awards season than we have.
Yeah, it's been a weird one for the Golden Globes, because looking at the nominations, especially for Best Picture or whatever they call it, there's a few that, like The Five Bloods wasn't nominated, which I think probably should have been. Mank was nominated, which it's not Fincher's Best Picture, and I think that's just sort of the industry sort of patting themselves on the back, saying, "Look at us, we've done a good job."
Mhm.
And of course, Michaela Cole, who did I May Destroy You, Chewing Gum, and she was in Black Mirror, the Star Trek spoof one.
Yes.
Wasn't even nominated for the TV award. Apparently, I've not seen I May Destroy You, but it's meant to be amazing. But you've got something like Emily in Paris, which has been nominated, which apparently isn't on the same level at all. So
There's quite a funny thing going around on Twitter at the moment. There's a comedian, I hope I'm pronouncing her name correctly, Abby Goviden, and she's a comedian, she's a stand-up comedian, and she has basically pulled a Borat and convinced everyone on Twitter that she created Emily in Paris. And it's absolutely fantastic. It's now in her bio. She managed to get it onto Wikipedia for a little bit as well. And basically, as soon as she had convinced everyone that she was the creator of Emily in Paris, she then went on this Twitter rampage saying how bad the show was, like she was dissing her own creation, to the point where the BBC bought it and got in contact with her to talk about it. And so many journalists have quoted her saying that Emily in Paris getting nominated for 2 Golden Globes, and this is a direct quote, I might add, Emily in Paris getting nominated for 2 Golden Globes is a lot like that one episode of the show where she does something to a 17-year-old. You're like, wow, whose idea was that? Yeah, and then she tweeted a fake conversation that she was having with the chair of the Golden Globe Society, saying, how do you get 2 nominations? Same way that you get weed. I just texted my Globes guy. And it's fantastic. So yeah, go and check out her Twitter. It's at AbbyGov, G-O-V, if you want to have a laugh at that, because she's honestly killing it. But she's quite right. You know, she made a joke that she tried to pitch Emily in Paris as this Indian girl in Paris, and Netflix wasn't interested. But as soon as she said it was a white girl, it was like 2 nominations at the Golden Globes.
Yeah.
So very funny Twitter page. Go and check that out. What else has been nominated, Charlie?
I think on a similar level, is it Screen Actors Guild? Is it
Mhm.
SAG Awards?
Yeah.
I think they've had a similar sort of listing for nominations, and I just feel like the Oscars previously said they've put like a diversity rules in place to help with this problem, and it's just it needs to be done on a grander scale over the awards, or else this like discrimination isn't going to go away, I don't think.
I feel like it needs to be tackled from the bottom sometimes rather than the top. Like, tackle it in the industry, and surely the awards will follow eventually. Do you know what I mean? Rather than just saying, "Oh no, we should judge these films differently," but then it's like, well, we can do that, but there's still lacking representation in all of the films that are being judged. Really, do you know what I mean? It seems a bit of a backwards way to do it, really.
I feel that the Oscars, the Academy, introducing that rule will help, though.
It will help, yeah. No, it will help, but I feel like it's just one of a couple of things that maybe should be done at the same time to try and convert it.
Yeah,
we'll have to see. Of course, without giving anything away, I know that here at Shoal we are working towards doing something special for the awards ceremony, so there'll be more news
hint, hint.
Yeah.
about that on the way. So stay tuned. Follow our socials if you want to stay in the loop with that. I think we should talk about Avatar.
Ben wants to talk about
We
Avatar.
need to talk about Avatar.
Take it away, Ben.
So, I think to start off Avatar, right, we should give a nice neutral beginning and give you some information about Avatar, in case you've not watched it, or in case you're curious about just some facts about it. So, a little short introduction. Avatar, directed by James Cameron. It has a runtime of 2 hours and 42 minutes. So you might want to set aside a solid afternoon for that one. It's available to watch on Disney Plus. It was released on the 10th of December 2009, with a budget of $237 million in production, and then it had a $150 million budget for promotion. It got nominated for 9 Academy Awards, of which it won 3: Best Art Direction, Best Cinematography, and Best Visual Effects. And last but probably by no means least, it grossed a total of $2.79 billion, making it the first film to gross more than $2 billion. The second highest grossing film, only beaten by Avengers Endgame, which actually, interestingly, only beat it by $7 million, which, when you're talking about $2.5 billion, is not a very large margin at all. Quite interestingly, if you adjust for inflation, because remember, these films probably came out, 10 years, a whole decade apart. Avatar surpasses it by $500 million, which is quite interesting. You know, how would it, if you want to ask the question, how would it perform today? So yeah, it's quite an interesting one. It was also the first film to pass $1 billion inside of 19 days from its release. And yeah, there you go. That's a little base fact file about Avatar for you.
Before we get into opinions, can I just say I never really think about when it was made, because that's right after the financial crash as well. Like, that's kind of a mad time for that film to be being made and being brought out. You'd think it would have affected it being produced a lot more.
Film of that scale, at that time period, is as you say, quite extreme.
Well, why don't we talk about why Avatar works? Because if you're not familiar with the story, it's quite an easy story to sink your teeth into. It's, Earth has become this, I wouldn't say desolate wasteland, but it's on its way there. It's sort of on its way to sort of dread territory, I would say. So humanity is fleeing planet Earth in the hopes of finding a new home to live, and the home that they pick is a planet called Pandora, which is rich and beautiful and just amazing to look at visually. The only issue is that humans being humans, we just want to go there and take everything that it has to offer. There is an indigenous species that we encounter throughout the film called the Na'vi, and one human hero of the story joins their side and fights back against the humans that just want to terraform or deforest their planet. And it's for all intents and purposes, it's a tale as old as time, really. But why did it work? I think it's mind-numbingly beautiful. I think is one of the first reasons why it worked. And the beautiful soundtrack, the visuals. It pioneered 3D in cinemas as well. But I mean, I'm interested to know, before we talk about some negative opinions, which I know there are a lot of today about Avatar, why do you think it worked?
It's like those scenes in Dread, the slow motion ones. It's like those. You can get lost in those scenes, and I think Avatar is one of those films where it's nearly a 3-hour scene of just being lost in something that looks beautiful, as you say. There's a lot of color to it, and it's just the depth of the world outside of the story is amazing.
I mean, I think you've definitely, from my opinion, you've simplified the story a bit there, and but that's fine. And I think if somebody's going to go watch it, you're definitely going to see everything. I've got some great. It's interesting, Connor, you said about the 2008 financial crash. So obviously that was pretty much in the height of its production, that it, the world around Avatar being made just like kind of kaboomed. But despite that, so some of the technological advancements and stats around it are actually just as mind-boggling as the animations and the world that they build. Would you like to know how much storage each frame, each minute, sorry, of the final film takes up?
Yeah, go on.
17.28 gigabytes of storage.
Jesus.
Wow.
So the amount of CGI in this film, and bear in mind this is a 2009 film, is just insane. At one point, the lead tech company had over 900 employees working on the CGI of this film. One film. Microsoft, okay, so the Microsoft created a new cloud computing and digital asset management system for the company, for the CGI company to use, because they had that many digital assets. This is 2009. Like, who the hell heard of cloud computing? Like, cloud computing now, is thrown around a lot in the tech world. Cloud this, cloud that, we host this on the cloud and do everything. But this is, 12 years ago now. It's kind of pretty bonkers to think about how much they did for it. And my last tech stack about the CGI is: would you like to know on what computer they did all of this rendering and all of this processing?
Please don't say it was a MacBook.
It was not a MacBook. I'm not entirely sure a MacBook this large exists. It was done on a 10,000 square foot server farm, which is almost a kilometer squared. It had 35,000 processor cores with 104 terabytes of RAM. The render farm currently occupies 100. The render farm currently occupies the 193rd to the 197th spots on the top 500 lists of world's most powerful supercomputers. So I don't actually have the stat of where it was ranked at the time, but it's a massive machine. And yeah, it's just mental about how much kind of tech they rammed into this film and had to use to make the film. I'm sure by the kind of standards of today's films, Avengers and later CGI heavy films, it probably doesn't seem that shocking. But at the time, I mean, can't think of another film.
And it created the benchmark.
That has so much CGI and so much tech into it, which for me makes it just special as well.
So what Ben's saying for the less nerdy people listening to the podcast is the CGI holds up.
It does indeed.
Yeah.
It does indeed.
No, I don't think you can deny the impact it had in terms of film technology. Like, it absolutely made a big impact there, and a positive impact too. It's not like I wouldn't say any of that was negative. I don't think you could argue that.
Did any of you see it in cinema with in 3D? Because I didn't. And I think maybe that's why I don't appreciate it as much. But so was it amazing in 3D when you saw it?
It was the first sort of non-gimmicky 3D thing I'd ever seen. So before then, the only 3D film I'd seen was something like Spy Kids 3D, and you got the DVD with the blue and red glasses. But this was special. You walked into the auditorium, you were handed a pair of these really big, you had these really big black glasses, and that was exciting in itself. And then there was a big announcement that told you to put your glasses on at this point, and then you had a few 3D trailers, and then it went straight into the film, and it was magical. And interestingly, and I think this leads on to why, in retrospect, the film isn't as great as we remember it, is that putting those 3D glasses on was kind of like pulling a veil across, in that there was so much spectacle going on with the amount of tech that was involved in making the film, and then the promotional material, the push for 3D in cinemas. There was so much going on, it was almost like an assault on your senses. And then to sit there for 2 hours and 45 minutes and witness all of that breathtaking photorealistic CGI, it really did something to your brain. And I remember coming out of the cinema, I was only 12 years old, and I remember feeling quite depressed that I had to leave such a beautiful world and to leave it behind. So I think there was something magical about its release, and I think it did so well and grossed that amount of money because it was such a careful timing, it was word of mouth, and it was also spectacle. And seldom do you get all three of those things at the same time for a film. So it'll be interesting to see if that same kind of spectacle can apply to the sequels, but we'll talk about that later. But yeah, in answer to your question, Chaz, it was something new and fresh and really mind-blowing.
So my question then is, with all these new technologies and it pioneering the use of or the extensive use of IMAX and 3D, is it enough with that on its own to make it a modern classic? I know Ben's answer is yes, but
I think it is, because aside, I know in your opinion it's quite an easy storyline, and I suppose it is. It's quite an easy storyline. They go to another planet. The humans want to take a resource. The indigenous population has to have. There's a cost to that, and I think, yeah, I definitely would put it in that. And I think the surrounding elements of all the tech that they use to build it, like, one of the other things I found out about this film, which was just mad, is that James Cameron wrote the original kind of not script, but kind of the original document on the idea of it and what he wanted it to look like, his vision. He wrote that in 1994. Like, that's before any of us were alive. I mean, that's just mad. Like, to me, it's like he's taken this vision and it's taken him 15 years to put this together in a way that he was happy for it to be released. And I think it's just such a monumental film, and it's so huge in so many different ways that, for me, I think it definitely makes it onto a modern classic. And I think even if you took away some of it, the fact that it made so much money, the fact it was so popular, it was so massive, I think definitely puts it in history for that alone. But yeah, as a classic, I would definitely put it up there.
Joe, I know you have maybe an opposing opinion on that.
Well, no, I actually would agree, and I think that what we can all take away from this part of the conversation is that Avatar delivered such a huge impact for the film industry. And I'm talking, pioneering new technologies. I know that it provided so many jobs. It also really propelled cinemas, and it also paved the way for a lot of other spectacle films that also benefited the film industry in the same kind of ways. And I'm obviously kind of talking about the Marvel Cinematic Universe at that point.
Yeah.
And so I think for all intents and purposes, Avatar is an incredibly successful film. But if I might offer an opinion, I think that Avatar is the most successful bad movie. And I mean, if you don't mind, here's why I think why. So I've noticed an issue that James Cameron has, and I've called this the James Cameron problem. So James Cameron is obviously very focused on spectacle, and he likes to make things as noisy and as big as he can on a surface level. But if you manage to sort of shield your eyes from that really blinding surface of his films, James Cameron's obsessed with one thing in most of his films, and that is his obsession between the struggle between rich and poor, whether that's in one way or another, whether it's white supremacists and natives, or whether it's yuppies and so you look at Aliens, you look at Terminator, you look at Titanic, class struggle in Titanic. He's obsessed with that. And my argument, one thing I would love to ask James Cameron if I ever got the chance to, would be, if you want to make films about those issues, why disguise them as sci-fi? Because it seems to me like James Cameron wants to bring awareness to serious issues like capitalism and like foreign powers and military powers occupying foreign lands and native lands. He wants to bring awareness to these issues, but it's like he's scared to commit to doing it fully. And he's been doing this since the 1980s, and it's boring. he did it with aliens. So that's a military force going into the territory of the aliens, and the aliens are using their own environment to their advantage. And if that's not some kind of allegory for the Vietnam War, I don't know what is. And then you look at Titanic, and that's class struggle disguised as a soppy romance. And then you look at Avatar, and I think, to sum it up, Avatar is pretty much Dances with Wolves, Last of the Mohicans, The Last Samurai, Pocahontas, Madame Butterfly, Miss Saigon in space. It's a story that I've seen so many times before, and I mean, for one thing, I think the Na'vi are quite emotionally manipulative for the audience because they're visually similar to us. So they're imposing human identity. Sorry, James Cameron is imposing human identity upon them. And the romantic relationship between the main character Jake and the main Na'vi girl Natiri, it doesn't come across as weird or uncomfortable because of the existence of the avatars in the film. So all sort of native aspects of the Na'vi are completely stripped away by the existence of the Avatar program. Because, God forbid that it was a transracial relationship. James Cameron's making them the same race so that it's not uncomfortable and weird for people to watch. And that's wrong. And, imagine if the story was set on Earth and it was some white dude was asked by the military to paint himself to infiltrate a tribe, and then he falls in love with one of them. It would be incredibly wrong. But I guess because it's sci-fi, it's okay. So what I would recommend to anyone who wants to watch a film that's similar to Avatar but actually succeeds in what Avatar wanted to do, watch District 9. That's an incredible film about one guy allying himself with aliens or natives or a different race of people, and it's not sort of like this kind of white savior of an indigenous species, because what a surprise, the main character's a white savior of an indigenous species. And but I guess it's okay because he's disabled and he's in a wheelchair. I take massive issue with that, and then that's my main issue. But there's also just lots of really silly things in the film. Unobtainium, the main material that they go after. Why call it unobtainium?
The one thing that really annoyed me is that the robot carries the gun. Why wouldn't you just put a gun inside the mech?
Yeah,
Why
that
would
stuck
it
out
carry
to
the
me.
gun?
Yeah, I hate that.
Yeah.
Well, hang on. So, first of all, right, the mech. The reason why the robot carries the mech is because have you seen the size of the guns on like the dollies they wheel around? It's like 10 feet long.
But why wouldn't you just build the gun into the robot thing? Why carry it?
Because what they're trying to say is it's human operated. I mean, there's quite a lot of things we can go off into it. What I want to do is I want to offer my opinion to Joe's like the kind of opinion on the underlying storyline. So I mean, I'm not going to speak for James Cameron's other films, and we're just talking about Avatar here. But for me, I didn't think. I think sometimes, and my opinion is sometimes that the underlying nature of the film can be kind of twisted into whichever narrative somebody wants to make it. I mean, I'm not saying, Joe, that you're twisting it. I would definitely concede to you on a few of those points. But what I want to stress is, from my perspective, I'm watching this film and I'm looking at different kind of morals and different underlying themes that I kind of am spotting, identifying, and that's kind of why I enjoyed the film so much. I'm not necessarily looking at it as, oh, here's a white guy going to save another population. For me, you said you kind of drew the kind of attention to that racial, like it's a white guy going into a different race. Well, I think first of all you need to remember that this is a completely different species. In the film, we're watching this sci-fi genre. You've got the ability to bring new species in. You can't have a cross-species relationship because they're not compatible. So obviously, there's a huge backstory about like why the Avatar program. So if you've not watched the film, basically they create fake Na'vi that a human brain can kind of go into through this kind of bridge. So it's not a permanent thing; it's temporary, which is why the disabled main character is able to essentially get this new body with legs, well, like functioning legs, which is quite they draw quite a lot of attention to that. And I think for me, what I see as that kind of underlying thing is you've got a person who was part of the human system. He was a soldier. He basically got blown up and lost his like kind of lost the ability to use his legs, and he's given this new lease of life. And in full, in partaking in this life, essentially he spends a huge amount of time essentially learning what the Na'vi are and who they are, and as a cultural kind of difference of how they differ. And he pretty much he falls head over heels in love with that, and he identifies with that more than the human environment that he's surrounded by, which is this kind of greedy corporate. It's quite anti-American, I think. And James Cameron he did quite a few interviews about how it was kind of drawing parallels from the Iraq War. And basically, like, the Americans are used to throwing missiles at people. And I think what he was trying to do was, and I would cede you the point here, Joe, that he did make the Na'vi, the native population, you instantly as the viewer became sympathetic to them, because they were kind of being crushed. And to be honest, they are. And I think there's definitely other levels to the message, but I don't think it's fair to go as far to say, this is a racial issue and that it's a white guy saving some people. And I think what it is it's culturally, you look at it and you think this is a culture that is intuitive, it is connected to their planet. And I think that's just a symbol for, they're living in, trying to just live in harmony. It's like this idealistic society. And here the humans are going after literally going after the ore in the ground, which was like 20 million a pop or something, whatever they were touting in the film. And I think, yeah, you could go as far, like you said, you could go and say, well, why is it a white guy? Why is it just this native population? But for me, I just think it's more morally, like, it's just about being different and like kind of not being this greedy, just bombing everyone that gets in your way and just kind of connecting with that culture. So that's my counter opinion to that. But yeah.
You make a lot of great points, and I think it all comes down to how much you want to suspend your disbelief as a spectator. And for me, I can watch Avatar and suspend my disbelief and agree with all of the points that you're making. But then I can also watch Avatar and think that I've seen this film done so many times before. I've seen the story of some war veteran going to live with some indigenous species or some clan or tribe and save them from white oppression. And I just think, again, back to my point about James Cameron, he wants to bring awareness to these themes. Like, he wants to bring awareness to the tragedy and the inequality of the Iraq War, but he's so scared to do it properly. Why does he have to disguise it as a sci-fi film? And we've seen these types of movies so many times before. Why did he have to take all of the cheapest parts from those films, put them in a multi-million-dollar blockbuster with loads of CGI, disguise it sci-fi, and think that he was going to get away with a really cheap story? That's my point.
I'd say that, sort of talking about condemning the kind of Bush era foreign policy, but it inadvertently feeds into some of the American foreign policy, which is always, we can go and save this other country because we should be the people to do it, kind of thing, and causing more harm than good, really. Like, why I think it is just that white savior thing, and I just always find that really uncomfortable.
Mhm.
Yeah, the plot is just really derivative, and that just always does my head in because it's all of those films. It's also Fern Gully, a cartoon that I watched when I was like very young, and I'd already seen the plot by the age of 5 or whatever, and like it just feels like a really shallow film for a lot of reasons. Like the Avatar, people, yeah, visually it's amazing, and the world visually is mostly amazing, but like, why make the species so humanoid? Why not push the boat out a bit and just sort of have more of an interesting character design or world design? Everything's still kind of something on Earth turned a little bit alien. You know what I mean? Like, here's a tree, but it has glowing bits, or here's something that's a bit like a lizard, but it also flies. And it was just, even that just felt like really derivative for me. I just couldn't get on board with a lot of it.
Exactly, and compare it to something like The Shape of Water, and where a human falls in love with this sort of amphibian humanoid kind of bipedal creature. And yeah, sure, it was weird to watch them have sexual relations on the screen between a human and this alien, or this, this kind of Lovecraftian being. But it was okay. I didn't mind being uncomfortable because it was new, it was fresh, it was pushing the boat out. I don't want to watch two blue aliens with big anime eyes, just touching tails.
I was about to say, it's not as weird as having sex with your hair. That's like another level of weird, isn't it? Like,
I mean, Charlie, we've talked about Avatar a lot this week in our chat, and I know, Charlie, you're quite impartial to the film, so I feel like Ben and I and Connor should should take a back seat and let you have a chat about it.
but what I find interesting from your discussions of it is the way you say that it's. I know, yeah, it is derivative of other stories, and these stories just being retold over and over again. But then that is all narrative. Like, you can't just say that this film is the only one that is a sucker for it, because I think like every story is derivative of another story, no matter what it is. It's, all stories come from something. You're never going to come up with something original ever. I know that's very off topic for Avatar, but
That's
a great point.
No, it's a great point, and I think maybe that's, when I think of James Cameron, in where he is in his career at the moment, it's kind of similar to George Lucas. George Lucas back in the 70s created something so so unique and well, not unique because he drew from other experiences, but what I'm saying, his craftsmanship and his directorial input was very fresh and creative, and he handed it over to more industry professionals for The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. And then when Star Wars grew as this huge franchise, and there was almost 2 decades between installments, look at what happened with the critical reception of the prequels, the noise surrounding Star Wars. And I think this is a good point to talk about the upcoming Avatar sequels. Is with 12 years between Avatar 1 and the upcoming Avatar 2, I just get this really bad feeling that the spectacle is going to be dead, and that all we're going to be left with is a sequel to another a derivative story of oppression and white saviors. And
So my response to that, firstly, is I just wanted to tie in the last point we made about the plot and it being quite basic. And I'll give it to you. There's not a whole lot going on there, but there's one thing I think I'm prepared to kind of let it get away with the fact that, yeah, okay, it's not super complex, but this I think was always intended. I think from the amount of detail that was put into the world and the amount of there was so much other stuff that was kind of just like on the periphery around the kind of first film, that I'm quite excited to see the script develop, because I think there's quite a lot of different ways you can go about this. Well, James Cameron kind of written this script, obviously at the end of the film we saw humans basically being kicked off the planet, and it's, well, hang on a second, they told us that Earth basically needed this material, they're not going to leave, so how's that going to come back around? And there's all sorts, I think, going on there, and they could go in quite a lot of different directions. So for the storyline, I'll give it to you for now. It's definitely been quite basic, but there's a lot of potential for it to can go. And I think that brings me on to this. Will it still be fresh after? Will it still work after having so long off? And I think there's definitely, you could say, like the Star Wars films, they kind of struggled, and there's quite a lot of different reasons, and I think those are quite public, been made quite a lot of. I think with Avatar, I think you only have to look at some of the stuff, some of the kind of the chatter and the images coming out from the production of the second film. The one thing that drew me in was I just saw this headline one day. It was like Kate Blanchett talking about how she learned to freedive. So it's not really a spoiler because they've not really talked about it too much, but basically Avatar 2 is set on the coast. So the original film set in the like kind of right in the rainforest, and we're going to get this kind of we're almost going to get a whole new world of Avatar, like, but on the same planet, and I'm really excited for that. And one of the reasons why it's taken so long is, again, like the first film, James Cameron literally had to design, build, and create the facilities to film this, to film the film how he wanted to. So there's been huge progression on underwater filming because there's a huge amount of scenes that are done underwater in this film. So when you say is it still gonna is the spectacle still gonna be there? I think it's gonna be, for me, it's gonna be epic just to see how he keeps it fresh, because I think he's definitely identified that.
I mean, I only asked that question because Avatar 2 is going to be in the realm of, the Disney empire of films, in which, spectacle it works still ish, but I think, after, post Avengers Endgame, I think how excited am I going to be to return to Pandora? And is this, it's great that James Cameron is inventing all of these new things and once again providing the film industry with pioneering technologies, job opportunities, and all of that. But on some level, I fear that that's just James Cameron doing his James Cameron thing, and once again pulling the veil over our eyes and giving us not one but 4 more Avatar films that are going to be 3 hours long each, in which it's going to be another derivative story sprinkled with a bit of fairy dust. So yeah, I'm worried for him. But one positive thing that I will say, because I feel like I've been quite negative about James Cameron, is that James Cameron is the king of sequels. He is very, very good at sequels. And you look at Terminator 2, look at Aliens. He is very good at mixing things up. He turned Alien from a haunted house horror film in space into this, guerrilla warfare bug hunt. And then he turned Terminator from this indie sci-fi kind of Mad Max Hitman kind of vibe into this really deep sci-fi story about family and the future and destiny. And so he's very good at developing on his ideas. I just hope he doesn't get lost in all of that spectacle and all this new technology, because he's delayed it so much because he wanted the technology to be there. And that's exactly why George Lucas didn't do the prequel trilogy in the 80s. And look what happened,
Yeah, I can't see the fact. When I heard that there was a sequel, I was already like, really? Does Avatar need a sequel? And then I thought there were only going to be 2 more films after it. And did you just say there's going to be 3 more films?
4. So there's going to 3 after the sequel. Yeah. So there's going to be Avatar 5 in total.
That's just insane to me. I just don't know how. I mean, Avatar 2 could completely surprise me and change this opinion, but I just really don't know I don't know what they're gonna get out of this world. Do you know what I mean? I just don't. They're either gonna do another sort of derivative story that's not gonna be that interesting, or they're not gonna push the boat out and try anything too weird, because then what does that mean for the next 2 films that they already know they have to, they're locked into making? I just can't see it being anything too interesting.
And Avatar is already, it's no longer a story anymore. It's a franchise.
Yeah.
So they're going to be doing things for the sake of the franchise, like Star Wars has been criticized of doing. It's no longer, like I said, it's no longer a story. So I don't know, are they going to be doing things for the sake of are they going to be doing things for our benefit, or are they going to be doing things for making money? And my money, ironically, is on them doing it to make money.
Yeah, this is what I'd say as well.
Mhm.
Who, like, apart from us right now, who really is still talking about Avatar? Like, what is its lasting pop cultural impact other than the film technology that it pioneered? Yes, absolutely, it definitely pioneered those things. But in terms of like in the pop culture consciousness, I just don't think it was there. And like, I feel like it's going to do this franchise thing, and then it's going to try and turn into this transmedia thing, like Marvel already is with all the other thing. Like, not just merchandise. I feel that Marvel, obviously they come from the comic books, but they try and tell the story throughout all these different media, which I think is a good thing of these franchises. I think that's interesting. I like to see where that goes. But I feel like is Avatar gonna have to do that kind of thing to stay relevant? And is it gonna do it well, or is it just gonna feel like cash grab tie-in things to the film and stuff? Like, I feel like there could have been a great Avatar video game, but there was just a movie tie-in game that I don't even really know anything about. Do you know what I mean?
It's such a strange case, and they're putting a lot of their eggs. They're putting a lot of eggs in one basket in the sense that Avatar never grew from the first film into a franchise. They have thrusted franchise upon it already by they basically said, okay, Avatar did really, really well in 2009. Here you go, James Cameron. Here's $1 billion, $1 billion to make 4 more films, and you better hope it turns into a franchise, mister.
Isn't it? I think it's quite an interesting one though, because it made $2.79 billion. Like, that is a baffling amount of money.
Yeah.
Like, do they like they've all if each of those, so let's say there's 4 sequels, right? So to the first one, let's say you give each of those $250 million. That's a pretty huge budget for each one. But if they all flop, the whole franchise is still broken even.
Yeah.
In fact,
No.
not even broken even. They've made profit, because you can bet that billion of profit, out of the 2 billion profit, you knock off 500 million for the costs and paying whoever, and then boom, half of that there's for the next few films, and then the other $1 billion will split it between, I don't know, what was it, probably like 40 people or something, So I don't know. I know, I know, and I think franchising is kind of like double-edged sword at the minute. And you see some franchises that have been hugely successful and some that haven't. And yeah, there's definitely reservations. Side note, the video game was amazing. Played that, loved it. Absolutely
okay.
amazing, awesome.
Of course it was.
It was actually very good. It was Ubisoft, so it's they know what they're doing. They've made some great games. It's a very open world. Which again, for 2009, it was a very beautiful game, open world and everything. Ticked a load of the boxes. Separate issue. Yeah, I think some of the prejudice maybe against it is obviously so far they're all untitled. So it's Avatar 2, Avatar 3, Avatar 4, Avatar 5. If the Marvel films were Marvel Film 1 to Marvel Film 32, and I think you'd maybe probably give it the same argument. So I think there's quite a lot of mystery and behind, where's it going to go? We have no idea. It's the fact that there's so long in between films. We've not even got a sequel yet to kind of see how it's going to develop. And I think there definitely could be some adaptation to the times, obviously. Production, like actual filming production, although this film has been in production, pre-production for so long, they actually only filmed it, I think, in 2018, 2019, some of it was done. So actually, there's, the script and the acting and the storyline, that could all be so much more advanced and so much more current that we look back at it 12 years ago, well, that was pretty boring, didn't really do anything special. Not gonna lie, I can't think of any other film from 2009 where I thought, wow, holy crap, that was an insane.
Inglorious Bastards.
Inception. Well, it was 2010, but
I don't know. It's difficult. It's difficult to kind of judge it, prejudge them. And the other thing, my final point on it is not really necessarily on Avatar, but I can't really think of a film which has had the level of technical detail and brilliance that Avatar visually gives us, that has a storyline to match. Like, I'm trying to think all the films where I'm like, wow, that story is so in depth and so nuanced and everything, doesn't have the kind of the opposite. So is there like this holy grail almost of films that does best of both? And is it possible? Did Avatar compromise itself by going so full out on this visual effects that the story and that kind of the theatrical side, and the cinephile in you, Joe, that really wants that to be such an amazing script and story? Like, was that compromised, and is it possible to have both? That's an
Yes.
interesting one going forward. Yeah, it definitely is, but has it been done yet to the point where you would agree unanimously that it's been done?
Jurassic Park has great effects, and it manages to mine a lot of the philosophical arguments that they're making about playing God and things. I think it does that well.
I know Connor's got big opinion on Interstellar, but Interstellar as well,
Yeah.
great visual effects, does have a good story.
Yeah, I'd say it has a good story.
It's marred. It's marred a little bit by some script, but by
Yeah.
some lines of dialogue. But yeah, I see your point, Ben.
Interstellar is at least ambitious in what it sets out to do. I'd say that already puts it a bit above Avatar for me. I think for me, most of it comes down to potential. Avatar had potential to be not only game changing in the technology, but it really could have answered more of the questions it set out to talk about and things. Like the main character is like, I don't want to say cured because that's not the right word, but he's he's able-bodied again. It's not really like why is he a character in a wheelchair? It's just for a cheap kind of plot point. Do you know what I mean? It's just like,
in an attempt to bring awareness to certain other issues, it creates others.
yeah,
Essentially,
it just seems like that. Really, it just doesn't resolve a lot of them for me. It just kind of says, oh yeah, we're bringing awareness to this issue, but like just the least effort needed to do that, if that makes sense.
Well, listen, guys, we could talk about Avatar, I think, for the rest of the evening. But I know that we are approaching time. So listen, it's been great to chat about Avatar. It almost got a little bit heated there between Ben and I, but I think
I
all
don't think it did.
Not heated enough.
Not heated enough. All right, well, we'll have a bit more juice for next week. Speaking of next week, we're actually moving up next week's episode a day early so that it arrives on Valentine's Day. And we are going to be looking at Crazy Rich Asians by director John M. Chu. So that's going to be good to sink our teeth into. I know a lot of us here haven't seen it.
No, you can't say that when his name's Chew.
Yeah, did you do that on purpose?
Yes, I did.
Oh no.
Well, listen, guys, thank you very much for tuning in. Please drop us a like, turn on the notification bell for next week. Give us a follow on our socials to stay up to date with our news. This has been the Shoal Weekly Podcast. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.